Welcome to the September the 29th, 1998 taping of It Happened in Grand Prairie. As we bring you the history of our city and this very special celebration month as we celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month. And this is our history tape number 347. And we are honored indeed today to have a Hispanic of real great stature that is really a true American and a true Grand Prairian. And we are so pleased to welcome to the dais today Mr. Sam Sines. Mr. Sam?
Thank you. It's good to be here.
We're just so glad to have you with us, young man.
Thank you for your invitation.
Yes.
Thank you for the young man.
Oh, yes. And a great person in Grand Prairie, my appointee to the Commission on Aging.
Yes.
And a very important man in your own right as a retired principal, a retired teacher, a retired superintendent, and now back in the full fray of teaching once again after all of these retirements. But you came on a special mission today. You came to tell us about Mexican Independence Day, a very special September the 16th, and about the Sines family and a whole lot of good things that we're counting on you for 30 minutes of history. Are you ready to go, Mr. Sam?
I tell you, being a school teacher, once you get going, you can't stop them.
That is true. I'll have to wind you down. And now you know where your camera is. And would you like to begin by telling us about the beginning of the Hispanics?
Well, the Hispanics came to this world before anybody else did, except for the American Indian.
Yes.
You know, Spain discovered America, as we use that word very loosely. And the Hispanics were here for 100 years before the English-speaking people came.
Yes.
A lot of people don't realize that. And Spain was, rather Mexico was almost 400 years old when America declared its independence in the 1800s.
Yes.
And we pretty much follow the America's movement. And you're going to see that I use the word we interchangeably, because sometimes when I say we, I'm talking about us, the United States of America, and then we, Mexico, because this was Mexico.
Yes.
This was Mexico until 1848. And if any of you saw the series on TV on Channel 13 last weekend or 2 weekends ago, you know that this was part of Mexico.
Yes.
But my family was in Spain, in northern Spain, since the Middle Ages, where our name originates, and I'll show you that a little later on. And we come from the Basque country of northern Spain, which is a lighter skin, and they migrated to this country, and you see a lot of them in northern New Mexico.
I see.
And you see a lot of them in my name comes from that part of the world. But getting back to Spain controlled Mexico from the early 1500s until 1820, when Mexico declared its independence. But
what brought about that independence?
The main thing that brought it about, there's 2 reasons why it was brought about, if you ask me, and you did. It was like a copycat thing that we did in this country. You know, you can declare yourself independent from England, we can do it from Spain. And I think we waited for the right moment, and when Napoleon I, that is, Napoleon Bonaparte, took over almost all of Europe, and he put his brother Joseph on the throne of Spain. This gave the Spanish-speaking worlds over here, the countries, an opportunity to break away from mother country, which was Spain.
Yes.
And of course, they were looking for freedom. We have to remember there were also slaves in New Spain, in Mexico and in South America.
Yes.
And those slaves were the Indians. Yes. And Mexico declared slavery illegally in 1829. Which was only 9 years after they won their independence from Spain, which they won it in 1820. We didn't do that until after the Civil War was over. It took a longer time for us to do it, and we had to fight a war to do it. Mexico didn't do that. Mexico declared freedom for slavery without even firing a shot.
Great.
Which was very interesting.
Yes, it was.
And we followed the United States of America. When I say we, Mexico did it. And what's interesting, talking about Hispanic Month, almost every country in Central America and in South America started doing the same thing.
September the 16th is the magic date.
It was like a
Yes.
domino effect. Yes, it was like a magic date. If you can do it, we can do it. Father Hidalgo, who was a Catholic priest, was an Indian. He was like we would say mulatto. He was actually part black, part Negro. And he was executed a year later. He was captured in 1810. He was dead by 1811. And then another priest took over in 1815. It took Mexico 10 years to really win this war and started a government. But Mexico really had problems between that date and all the way to 1860. That's another story. And that's why we have El Cinco de Mayo. You know?
Yes.
But Mexico's Independence Day is September the 16th, 1810. And that's when Mexico said, we want freedom. We want the same thing that the United States has. We want freedom for our people. Because Spain was not very nice to its people. Spain had controlled this world for
a long time.
For so many centuries, and there was not that much progress going on.
Yes. All right. And you have been very, very historical in telling all of this, because you have studied this for years and have been very important to us over the past 10 years, and coming on our program when we've had the Cinco de Mayo celebration, telling us about Cinco, and then you kind of hinted about September the 16th, but what I would like to see, I would like for you to stem wind a group that would really take that September the 16th celebration and really make it as meaningful as it would be the 4th of July is in America.
Well, the September the 16th, as I was telling you, is the Independence Day breaking away from other countries, just like the 4th of July.
Yes.
El Cinco de Mayo is something else.
Yes.
Okay. Mexico, during the time between 1820, when it becomes independent, and 1860, when Benito Juarez becomes president of Mexico, has many, many problems.
Yes.
Mexico loses half of its territory.
Yes.
The United States took it over, and that was on Channel 13.
Yes.
The French invaded Mexico twice, as far as I know, in the 1840s, and then they invaded in the 1860s. What a lot of people don't realize is that in the 1860s, France came into Mexico and was using Mexico as kind of a gate to get in to come to the southern states and help the South.
Yes.
And Mexico stopped them.
Yes.
Mexico stopped them at Puebla, El Cinco de Mayo, and around 1863, and that delayed France's invasion into the United States. Yes. The main objective was the United States, and this is why we get excited El Cinco de Mayo, because of that. It was only one battle, that's all.
Yes.
But the beauty of this thing is that it united Mexico.
Yes.
Mexico had been very disunited for many, many, many years. Internal problems, external problems, invasions from abroad and what have you. So now they have a unity.
Yes.
And not only were they united within themselves, but with the United States.
Mm-hmm. So
they had a common goal. They had a common goal at the time.
That is a
And that's why they celebrate
day.
El Cinco de Mayo.
Yes.
But as you said a while ago, El 16 de Septiembre has another significance, and that's comparing Father Hidalgo to George Washington.
Yes.
Yes, and the difference is 50 years or 52 years, 1810 to 1860 to 63.
Tell us about the Science family. That's very interesting. I believe you have a crest.
I have our family crest here that pretty much. I don't know whether this can be seen.
Oh, Louis is going to come out here.
This is the family crest. And this dates back to the Middle Ages, as they tell us in some of the readings that I've had about the Science family crest. You see on the crest, if you can see, you see two wolves fighting each other. And,
with the white background.
Yes, right here in the middle, you see two wolves fighting each other, which that signifies consistency. That signifies that you don't give up as to what you're doing. You keep on, your determination. And the most interesting thing that I see about our family crest, and you don't see it in all of them, is that tree on the other side, and that's the tree of knowledge.
Yes.
And there is such a thing as a tree of knowledge, and it's symbolic when it comes to education. So I'm very proud to say that maybe my family back there, many, many hundreds of years ago, thought education was important.
Yes, and that is beautifully done.
By the way, the feathers on the top signifies nobility.
Uh-huh.
Yes, and it shows here. One of our ancestors was the president of Argentina, according to what I have read. So the Science family has had. There was a science family in Spain that had they were very wealthy. A lot of them decided to come and explore, and this is how we ended up here.
All right, and the two red marks below the tree of knowledge?
Those are poplar leaves. They're leaves of the trees also. That's part of the tree.
Okay.
I don't know why they're in red. And because leaves are, unless they're turning as we do in autumn,
Yes.
and they turn red,
Yes.
the leaves turn. But there's a poplar tree according to the symbol.
And if you would reverse that and let Louis get a shot of the explanation of it on the back, I think that is beautifully done.
There's one for everybody. There's places where you can send off for this information.
Yes.
And they tell you everything about your family, the history,
The crest.
and where did your name originate. And sometimes they even tell you where you can find people who have the same name who live next door to you. Because some people do this for a living. And
Yes.
everybody has a name, especially if you came from Europe.
Uh-huh.
Germany, England, there's one there for you.
And you get on the internet and just learn
You can
lots
find
of
this
things.
in the internet also,
Oh,
yes.
yes.
Very much so.
All right. What's Mr. Sam doing now? When did you come to Grand Prairie, Texas?
We came to Grand Prairie in 1971.
And we means whom?
Well, my family and 3 kids.
All right.
My wife, Selena, and 3 kids came. We came from Austin. I was working for the Texas Education Agency in Austin. I was a consultant
All right.
with the State Department of Education. By the way, Ruthie, I'm also retired from the military.
Oh, I didn't
You
get that
you
in
didn't
your...
mention that.
All right,
Okay.
and what branch?
I was in the Army. I was in the United States Army during the Korean War. As a matter of fact, I used to jump out of airplanes. You have
Yes.
to be a little crazy to do that, but we did it.
Yes.
And they call us paratroopers. You know, when you look at how much we weigh, you
Yes.
wouldn't let you do it today.
Yes.
And I was never a superintendent. I was an administrative assistant and I was a principal, but never a superintendent.
All right, I promoted you.
Yeah, you promoted me. I was offered a job one time as that, but no. And I came to work here from Austin with the TEA, as they call it, and I was brought over to Dallas with the United States Office of Education,
Yes.
which at that time was under HEW, Department of Health, Education, and Welfare. That department died in 1980, a natural death. And 2 new departments were born. One is called HHS, Health and Human Services, and the other one is called the Department of Education.
Yes.
Under Jimmy Carter, it was created. And I stayed there, and I actually started the Office of Public Information and Public Affairs. They didn't say public relations. We had affairs. We didn't have any relations. Sometimes people laugh when I told them that.
Yes.
And I retired from that office about 5 years ago. I didn't have to retire. I just figured I'm old enough, and I was sitting at home doing nothing, and a friend of mine from the Texas Women's University called me, and he says, how would you like to work? And I said, well, I went over there. Make a long story short, I've been working with them for almost 3 years now. Teaching, I've taught over there a couple of courses, and I taught, and I also supervise student teachers and teacher interns. But I've also helped the schools over here as a substitute.
Yes.
And Mr. Barry told me one day, he said, why don't you just come with us full time? And that's it. I'm teaching Spanish at Grand Prairie High School.
I think that's
Full time.
Just wonderful.
Full time, bunch of kids, and I told
And
the kids
all
to
of
watch
them-
TV. And
Yes.
I tried to tell them that, you know, the older you get, the more you learn. And some of the people who know me, sometimes when they walk in the classroom, they say, listen to this man, because he's been around. He can tell you all kinds of things.
You haven't mentioned your family, other than your wife. Now, we
my-
have Selena in here, but let's talk about your kids.
I have one daughter in Colorado. You probably heard of her. She used to teach here in Grand Prairie. Her name is Rachel.
All right?
Rachel Sines. She's married. She's got 2 kids. She
So you would give her husband's name?
His name is Herbert Messerich.
All right?
Messerich.
All right, and they live in Colorado.
They live in Colorado. They're about 35 miles west of Vail.
And they gave you a grandchild last
They
year,
gave me
didn't they?
one. They had given me 2, as a matter of fact.
All right.
A boy and a girl, and they're
All right.
just as beautiful as can be. And we get to see them very often. We love to drive over there because that's beautiful country.
Beautiful country.
Especially in the summer, it's so cool. We
Okay.
like to go over there. And of course, you know Lorraine.
Yes.
And she was on the school board for 3 years.
And you would give us her husband's name?
His name is Rick Saravia. He has a law office over here.
All right. And,
and,
you,
of
and they
course-
have children?
They have 4 kids. One of them's going to college, and one of them's playing football. He's about 6 years old.
Oh, how great.
Yeah, they have this Pee-wee
Football team.
football team.
Do you go and cheer him on?
Yes, as much as possible, because you know that you're busy doing other stuff. But
All
we
right.
try to get out there.
All right, that's 2 children.
Well, I have another one in Denton.
All right.
His wife is teaching over there now. Graduated from TWU, and they are doing very well.
And you would give us his name?
His name is Junior.
Oh, it's Junior.
Junior.
Oh, that is
Yes,
great.
Yes, and I have my older one. His name is Jose,
Yes.
and his wife is a teacher aide here. Janie Science is a teacher aide for the school district.
All right.
So now we have a bunch of grandkids. We don't have 30 minutes to mention them all.
All right, but
So-
you love them all, don't you?
Well,
Almost all of them.
yes, they're all.
All well
But I was going to say
behaved,
something else, like everybody gets a Christmas present, and
Yes.
all this kind of stuff.
Oh,
but,
yeah, that's wonderful.
everybody gets a Christmas present.
That is some heritage, Mr. Sam.
Yeah. Now, you had another question you wanted to I mean, go ahead. I think this stops this particular portion of the interview.
We have
I'll hand it over
we
to you.
have the family documented. We have your work ethic documented, but we don't have Mr. Sam when he was a young boy going to school, and like in elementary, and then on up. What made you pursue a career in education, and did you have mentors? And give us a little bit about the real Mr. Sam.
Well, before I answer that question, let me tell you who brought me to Grand Prairie. I
right.
didn't mention that. A man by the name of Browning Combs
Yes.
brought me to Grand Prairie. I don't know whether anybody remembers him.
Yes.
He was superintendent of schools here, and one of my first assignments when I came to work in Dallas was to come to Grand Prairie to look at a school over here on the west side by the name of Darworth Elementary,
Yes.
because they wanted to be integrated. Integration had come in.
Yes.
Desegregation. And that was one of my first assignments. And I came here to Grand Prairie, and Mr. Combs gave me a grand tour of the city.
How great.
And I told Mr. Combs, I'm going to buy a house here.
Oh, great.
And he said, we're glad to have you.
Yes.
And Mr. Combs passed away. I was late for his funeral that day. I was out of town, and by the time I got in, they had already gone to the cemetery. And I don't know, we became pretty good friends, very good friends.
Oh, that's wonderful.
M. Browning Combs, I'll never forget him.
Yes.
I come from a very poor family. My father was a migrant, and he never went to school. He died, got killed in a car wreck when I was about 8 years old.
Yes.
And I learned how to speak English when I was about 12.
Great.
Although none of my family comes from Mexico, except my grandma from my father's side. My father was born in Texas. My granddad was born in Texas. We're not the type that migrated. I think we were here when Santa Ana invaded the Alamo. And then Santa Ana was captured in San Jacinto. But we don't, my grandma from my mother's side comes from a little town south of, or north of Monterrey by the name of Doctor Gonzalez. And her last name was Madrigal. Madrigal, according to an aunt who's now about 90 years old, she told me that meant people who came from Madrid.
I see.
And Madrid is the capital of Spain.
Yes. Oh,
Okay?
yes.
But as far as going to school, we missed a lot of school because when my father died, we pretty much took over to support the family. We have to remember this, and I hope people are listening to this. When I went to school as a young kid back in the 40s, there were no free lunches.
Yes.
There was no welfare. There was no food stamp. There was nothing. It was my mama with a third grade education raising 4 kids.
Yes.
And that was not easy for mama. So we became supporters of the family.
Part of the supporters.
And we missed a lot of school. And because of that, we were retained. And there was one year when I was promoted from the 5th grade to the 7th grade in 1 year.
How great.
Yes, I don't know, the Lord was on my side or something. And,
Yes.
and wonderful teachers. I had a teacher by the name of Edna Tobias when I went to junior high school in Robstown. And she kept us after school every day. There was 2, 3 of us to teach us math because we were way behind. She was wonderful. And she was voted as an outstanding teacher in the country, not in the country, in the state of Texas by the state legislature in 1952. And she listed 52 students, one a year that was her favorite student. One particular year was my year.
Great.
I was her favorite student.
Oh, isn't that
I used to
wonderful?
help with grade papers, and I was learning how to speak English when I was in her class.
And you graduated from where from high school?
Robstown High School.
Robstown High School.
Yes.
Who was your mentor in Robstown High School?
Oh, I had many. She was one of them.
Yes.
She was one of them, and of course another one was the principal, whose name is dead now, from East Texas, Jack Philbrick. When I became a teacher there in the early 60s, 2, 3 years later, I became his assistant principal.
How great.
I was the first Hispanic.
Yes.
I was the first Hispanic assistant principal in that community,
Yes.
which was very interesting because not many of us went to college.
Yes.
And that's something that Hispanics should listen to this, because college is important. And I was principal, listen to this, I was principal in every school that I attended when I was a kid.
How wonderful.
When I was a kid.
You went
And
back.
I went back. And some of the teachers who were my teachers when I was a student were my teachers when I was the principal.
Isn't that
That
splendid?
that is remarkable.
You can write a book.
Yes, ma'am. It was interesting that this happened, and all of these teachers never call me Mr. Science. They call me Sam, because they didn't know any other name to call me.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Even though you were the principal.
That's right.
Oh,
That's right. But it was a beautiful relationship that we had, and we had 1,200 kids when I was the junior high principal, and we had 2 campuses, and we had, it was a lot of work.
Who saw that you went to college? Who saw that you went to college? Who was your mentor?
The only mentor that really, when I was in the military, of course, I told you I'm retired from the military,
Yes.
but I got out and went on to the active reserves to do this. But I had a lieutenant in the military that we were always together. We were in the artillery, we were forward observers, and one day when the time came to get out, he asked me if I would just sign up again for many more years and they would give me some money. And then I told him, I said, I think I'm going to get out and go to school. He said, what school? I said, I want to go to college. Because in my community where I come from, nobody went to college.
Yes.
And this lieutenant, his name was Baker, he looked at me and he said, let me tell you something. And he called me Sam. He didn't even call me Sergeant or anything like that. He said, let me tell you something. He said, if you're going to go to college, get out of here. Get out of the Army. And if you don't want to go to college, stay here. You have a career here with the military.
Yes.
And I said, okay, I'm gone. I got a scholarship from the military. It's called GI Bill,
Yes.
but they sent me to
Yes.
college.
Great.
And I want people to know this. If you're in the military and you sign up in Texas, you can get a doctorate degree for free.
Yes.
The state of Texas has a program. I got my master's degree free.
Yes.
You don't pay any tuition. So
Yes.
you can get all the education you want. It doesn't cost you a penny. You have to buy your own books, but that's different. But the tuition is free.
And where did you go to school?
I went to Texas A&M in Kingsville. Now, that's what they call it now. When I started going to school there, it was called Texas A&I
Yes.
College, and then it became Texas A&I University. And I also attended the Del Mar College in Corpus Christi for 1 year. It's a junior college. And I also took some courses at the University of Texas in Austin.
With a career in what?
Education.
You decided in education?
Education.
That was on that tree.
Oh, I was going to be, that's right. I was going to be a teacher from the very beginning. I wanted to be a teacher.
Yes.
But you know that what they did, now you may call this the full cycle, the full circle. You did the full circle. I was a teacher for about 3 years, and they took me out of the classroom, made me an assistant principal. And I used to go to the rooms and tell the teacher, get out, let me teach. Now I have gone around and I'm back in the classroom.
Yes. Made a full circle.
Made a full circle.
Like Mr. Tovar has done here at this studio. That is just
Full
simply
circle,
wonderful.
gone completely around.
Okay.
And I enjoy every bit of it. And if my kids are listening, then I enjoy it. Sometimes the kids don't believe this, but I enjoy being there. And I've told this to my friends: the moment that I don't enjoy it, I'm just going to go home.
Yes.
I'm just going to go home, because I can be
Right.
home.
Do you have any outside interests other than teaching school and your family?
We like to travel. We travel a lot. We have a home in northern New Mexico that we bought about 3 miles from downtown Taos. And we love the climate over there.
Yes.
So we like to travel. We travel a lot. My wife and I are movers, you know.
Yes.
And that's one thing we like to do. Of course, I'm an avid reader.
Yes.
And I'm an avid traveler. I'm always reading. If you come to my house, I have a room full of books that I read. I love to read history. And I love to read, of course, the newspapers. I'll tell you all about the Rangers, because I love to go see the Rangers. And
Yes.
I hope they win and everything else. But we love baseball, both my wife and I. And of course, we're back in our cowpokes. But we do travel a lot to South Texas. And but our movement is towards the western states, because it's so cool in the summer.
Yes.
And because we go all over. We go all over. We don't stop. We've been all over the United States. We have gone to Canada. We have gone to Mexico. We like to travel, because I really recommend that to everybody. We have a lot of people who never go anywhere. Get out and see what's on the other side of that Fort Worth over here, and
Yes.
it's beautiful.
How about research of the Science family? Do you plan ever to write a book or to do anything in the literary way?
I have a lot of documentation a lot
Right.
of things that I have documented about what we've done. I have a friend in Austin who just finished writing a book about some of his experiences, and I said, well, I can do the same thing. So I've been thinking that and I've been asked that before. You're not the first one who asked me that.
All right.
When are you going to write a book? I said, well, I have a lot of notes and other things that I just throw them in this little box. And someday, I don't know who's going to buy the book, but it would be nice to have the book and say, look what you can do and we can do. You know, we have a lot of kids who don't realize that they have this potential. And
I want you to stop right now. Look out into that camera. We have about 2 minutes left on our interview.
Okay.
I'd like for you to spend at least a full minute talking to the boys and girls about how important their decisions can be in their future life.
Well, life is, or education is just like when we have an expression in the Spanish language that says, lo que siembres vas a cosechar. And in English we say, what you sow, you're going to reap. And it's so true. And I even tell this to the kids, if you put a seed of a weed out there, you're going to get a weed. Or whatever you do now, the kids come to school and they're late. That's the habits that you're forming right now. You're going to be late for work, you're going to be in trouble. You have to develop good habits, right now, good study habits. Mm-hmm. Responsibility, commitment, all those words are really important. And life is not a joke. School is not a joke. You have to take it seriously right now, especially if you're in high school. You have to really, in the 9th grade right now, if you're in high school, from the very beginning, we have a lot of kids who do that. And these are the ones who end up in college. These are the ones who end up being our doctors, our lawyers, our engineers, or whatever you want to call it. But you don't have to be that. You can be something else. There's so many opportunities right now in technology. We have all this in the schools. Almost every room has computers now, something that we never had. And I can go back and compare this, something we never had. Today, I told some of the teachers in the school that when I went to school, even college, I never attended an air-conditioned building.
Yes.
And I'm not that old.
Yes.
I'm not that old. It's just, this is something new because air conditioning was not there in the 70s, or in the late 60s or 70s, even in the universities, except some buildings. This is something that we take for granted now. We take a lot of things that we have in our schools for granted. So again, you need to be responsible. Yeah. We have a gentleman who wrote a couple of books that I read. His name is Heinrich van Loon. He wrote The Story of America, The Story of Mankind. And in one of those books, The Story of America, he says, those who wish to enjoy greater privileges must also assume greater responsibilities.
Mm-hmm. And that's for the kids.
That's for the kids. Because a lot of them say, I need a car now. Mm-hmm. I need to buy a car now. And you need the education now. You can buy the car later. But we have a lot of kids already paying for a car, and they're in the 9th grade. Yes. Spending a lot of time working after school and not getting good grades. But I don't know. You set priorities. You have to set your priorities straight. And this is what's really important to me. What's help me later, not help me right now.
Yes.
A lot of our poor kids are more interested in what I can get now.
Yes.
They're very impatient. I got to get this stuff now. And that even involves having children.
Yes.
Don't have children unless you can support them. And we're doing it right now. We have children having children. Children raising children. That's the problem.
Mr. Sam, you have just been wonderful. We have just used up all of our time. And it just seemed that we just sat here just a few minutes ago.
Just a few minutes.
Just a few minutes
I told you teachers talk too much.
I want to thank you so much for sharing your successes and some of your excitement of your life with all of those of us. And you're a real addition to this great Hispanic Heritage series that we're doing. We want to thank you for being here. We want to thank Selena for letting you come be on the show and talk about the family and all of the things that she's a very private person, and we appreciate that. And thank you for coming, Mr. Sam.
Thank you, Ruthie, for inviting me.
And this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do.